It's my position that leftism is a cult. I've talked about it before in earlier videos. In this video, I want to talk about one other similarity between the leftist cult and other more well-known, well-identified cults, and that is the concept of the suppressive person. I argue that the concept of the suppressive person shows itself in the leftist cult with their outrage mobs and their censorship campaigns and their deplatforming, their ostracism, their guilt by association. And before I start, I want to say leftism, it's a term that describes partly liberalism, progressivism, postmodernism, the Frankfurt School, cultural Marxism, globalism. All of these things are wrapped up in this word leftism. And that's the word I've chosen to use today because I think the other ones are not wide enough. They're not broad enough. Because you see, unlike a regular cult, say NXIVM or Scientology, we don't get a choice of whether or not we join. In Western democracies these days, it's like you're automatically in, no matter what you say. They only start to treat you like a suppressive person if you question any of the doctrine. I argue that this, more or less, represents the leftist doctrine. I'm sure there's more, I'm sure there's things I've missed, but for the purposes of this video, let's go with this, and I'm going to quickly read it. The politically correct beliefs of the leftists. A, man has created an impending climate catastrophe, and the only solution is greater taxation. And the science on that is settled, by the way. B, male and female are social constructs which a person can opt out of by proclamation. C, unfettered international migration will help bring world peace. D, masculine traits are toxic. E, all white people have unearned privilege which is only visible to non-white people. F, the collective will decide what information any individual may hear, see, read, or view. G, free speech is an outdated concept. We should strive for politically correct or safe speech. H, violence should be condemned at all times, but violence is sometimes necessary to prevent the utterance of certain words. I, children should be exposed to graphic sexual language as early as possible in order to protect them from perverts. J, Islam is a religion of peace which does not suppress women or children. K, Donald Trump is a dangerous, racist maniac. L, any attempt to deny any of the above will result in the immediate declaration of the individual as a suppressive person. So more or less, and you could quibble about the wording, but it's important for this video that I lay down the doctrine because what I'm going to do soon is go through a list of some of the people who have transgressed one or more of those points of doctrine, and we'll see what has happened to them. This is from Scientology Canada's website, and it is their definition of a suppressive person. A suppressive person, SP, is a person who seeks to suppress other people in their vicinity. A suppressive person will goof up or vilify any effort to help anybody, and particularly knife with violence anything calculated to make human beings more powerful or more intelligent. The suppressive person is also known as the antisocial personality. Within this category, one finds Napoleon, Hitler, the unrepentant killer and the drug lord. Now, what does that remind you of? This? Top House Democrats compare Trump's rise to Hitler's. And conservatives upset that the good fight wants you to punch Nazis. Leftism has an obsession with comparing people to Hitler, and Scientology made use of that same comparison. Scientology says that suppressive people goof up or vilify any efforts to help anybody. And that's what the left says about conservatives, that we're just standing in the way of love and peace and acceptance. So it's very similar. Let's continue with Scientology's definition of suppressive person. The basic reason the suppressive person behaves as he or she does lies in a hidden terror of others. Have they made that comparison to conservatives? Here's Psychology Today. Fear and anxiety drive conservatives' political attitudes. And from Mother Jones, what they found is people who have more fearful disposition also tend to be more politically conservative and less tolerant of immigrants and people of different races from their own. That's just 2 examples. But if you Google this, you will find 100 easily to choose from. They keep running that same talking point. And it really reminds me of Scientology. The suppressive person behaves as he or she does lies in a hidden terror of others. To such a person, every other being is an enemy. Thus, the antisocial personality is also against what Scientology is about, helping people become more able and improving conditions in society. Just like the leftists say. If it weren't for opposing views, if it weren't for conservative values, if it weren't for suppressive people, we could live in a progressive utopia where we can switch genders on a whim. Everybody comes and goes out of everybody else's country. There is no war. The climate is under control. We don't have flooding. We don't have ice storms. We don't have wildfires. It's just conservatives holding them back from achieving these goals, right? It really reminds me of the cult of Scientology. Interestingly, Keith Raniere adopted terminology from Scientology. In this article from the Frank Report, he goes over how Keith Raniere's method of dealing with people who leave NXIVM is exactly the same as Scientology's method of dealing with people who leave Scientology or dare to question it. Here's Leah Remini now to give you a very short description of what happens when you leave or disparage Scientology.
Dealing with suppressive people means to go after them, try to destroy their lives, try to find any crimes they've committed, expose them hard. You can lie about them. They have Scientologists picketing in front of people's houses going, don't trust your neighbor, implying that he's a sexual deviant. They go after your jobs. And when that doesn't work, they go after your family.
The left, because the cult is so much bigger and it owns the media and it owns a lot of education and it owns a lot of the government, well, they can be much more effective than Scientology can in this effort to destroy your life. This article from The Verge talks about how far this retaliation goes now. And this is 2 years ago. Parts of the far right, quote unquote, also lost access to basic infrastructural internet services, domain registration systems. Cloudflare cut them off from DDoS protection. Apple Pay joined PayPal in cutting off sites from being able to sell their merchandise, in this case, white nationalist merchandise. Uber and Airbnb said they would ban users from quote-unquote hate groups. Spotify said it would remove a number of hate rock bands. Something like hate group? What does that mean? Who gets to define that? We're not going to get into it in this video, but the cult defines it. So anyone not in the cult, anyone critical of any of these doctrines, anyone critical of any of these points here can be labeled a hate group, and you saw all the services they can be cut off from. Here's Robert Spencer here, who ironically wrote The Complete Infidel's Guide to Free Speech. He had his Patreon and MasterCard access threatened or cut off. He did have them cut off. I'm not sure if he had them restored after that. But these are very basic tools of life now. Censorship is fully here, and it is being carried out the way a vindictive cult carries out its retaliation against people who disagree with it. People have gotten their access to their payment processors taken away. They have had their voices taken away. They have been fired from their jobs. Let's go through a few of them now. The first one I'll start with is Cassie J, because this happened quite early on. You see, this video here is actually from 2015, and she's talking about her GoFundMe. I think she had her a Kickstarter campaign for a documentary she was working on about the men's rights movement. And of course, she is in violation of point D of the doctrine. Masculine traits are toxic. Cassie J proposed to show the other side of the argument in men's rights because they had been so vilified in the media. Cassie Jaye was going to be sympathetic to them. And as such, she endured a massive smear campaign and a deplatforming and a brigading. And she was one of the earliest examples. It is worse because she's a pretty young female. And the feminists, well, they had opened the door to her. And she didn't want to stay in their club. So she got extra vilified. Next, we have Pamela Geller. This is just from today, saying that WordPress has terminated the longtime website Creeping Sharia. Violation. Point J. Islam is a religion of peace which does not suppress women or children. A little while back, we had Brett Weinstein lose his job at the demands of the crazy leftist lunatics at Evergreen College. You can see he objected to a day without white people. Evergreen wanted to have a day without white people, and he objected. And a near riot ensued. If you don't know that story, you should go look at it. Brett was in violation of point E. All white people have unearned privilege, which is only visible to non-white people. A feminist was banned from Twitter for speaking out against transgender radical activism. Didn't matter that she was a feminist and a leftist. She was in violation of point B. Male and female are social constructs which a person can opt out of by proclamation. She does not agree with that, and she has to be banished and punished. This week, an Ontario judge handed down a judgment before there was even a trial against this man, Kevin J. Johnston, who ran for mayor of Mississauga and has YouTube channels and a website. He speaks very openly in very non-politically correct terminology about Islam and our open borders problem and the strain that it's putting on our Canadian culture. Obviously, Kevin is in violation of point J about Islam being a religion of peace. Kevin got a judgment of $2.5 million against him for Islamophobia. Islamophobia is not a real thing. It's a cult thing. Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, he's in violation of point G. Free speech is an outdated concept. We should strive for politically correct speech. In Carl Benjamin's case, they are dredging up something he said in 2016. He made a joke, a distasteful joke, albeit, saying, "I wouldn't even rape you," to a woman MP. Yes, that's very distasteful. It shows a bit of a lack of self-control. But should he be still paying for that 2 years later? Tommy Robinson. We know he's in violation of point J. Laura Loomer in violation of point J as well, Islam being a religion of peace. She also gets extra punishment because she is a Jew and she is female. So she should be happy to be in the liberal cult. The fact that she dares to wander off the reservation and become conservative, this was something they always hated about her. The irony in Laura Loomer's case is, if people had listened to her back before the midterm elections, Ilhan Omar would not even have been elected to the place she is now. People refused to listen to her. In fact, she got banished from Twitter during that time period. She was pointing out everything that has since come to light and people were shocked about. I knew about it. People who got to see Laura Loomer knew about it. But see, people in the cult won't let themselves look. It's a total violation to even associate with someone who is a suppressive person like Laura Loomer. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I'm going to go through these a little faster now, but I just want to show you how many there are, and this is by far not an exhaustive list. We had Count Dankula, where he showed his pug doing a Sieg Heil as a joke on his girlfriend. He got taken to court, almost went to jail. Roger Scruton fired because the reporter lied and took statements out of context in an interview, but it doesn't matter because he doesn't hold the opinions that the progressives and the leftists want him to hold, so they wanted to fire him anyway. This was just an excuse. Mark Taylor, he's getting censored on Twitter and YouTube. He's in violation of point K. Donald John Trump is a dangerous racist maniac. He's a Trump supporter, and he's also a Christian, which doesn't help him at all. Roseanne lost her show, was dragged through the mud publicly, and her statements taken out of context. She wasn't given a chance to explain herself, and even when she finally did get an explanation out there through other venues, nobody accepted her reasoning. She's in violation of point K as well. She is pro-Trump, and she had to pay the price. They were just waiting for her to do something that they could take out of context. CJ Pearson, it's kind of the same story. He's pro-Trump, but he's a black male. That can't be allowed. Anne-Marie Waters, she's a lesbian. She has rejected entrance into the leftist cult, and she is speaking out against the rape gangs in Britain. For that, she loses her Twitter account. The man who literally wrote part of the DSM, the psychiatric manual, about gender dysphoria, was booted from Twitter for stating scientific facts about gender dysphoria. It doesn't go along with their program. He's in violation of B. It doesn't matter that he's a scientist. Ayaan Hirsi Ali was raised Muslim. She is clearly not a white person. She's in violation of point J. She dared to speak out against Islam. We have a professor in Canada, Rick Mehta. We don't even know what he's in violation of, but he lost his job, and we just have to take it from the keepers of the flame, the progressive leftist clerics at his university, Acadia, that there was good reasons to fire him, but they won't tell us what they were. This guy, Bill Whatcott, he was handing out flyers in opposition to a transgender person, Morgan Ogre, running for political office in Canada. For that, he got fined $55,000 by a tribunal, a kangaroo court. Most of this stuff, as you'll notice, there's no judge or jury involved. There's no law involved. This is mob rule. This is cult rule. Owen Benjamin, violations of A, B, C, D, E, J, I, K, and L, and probably more. Gemma O'Doherty, violations of just as many as Owen, and maybe more. She takes on globalism, so it's basically like taking on the cult full on. She lives in a place where she could go to Google headquarters after she had her live streaming abilities taken away by YouTube. She could go and physically be in the offices, and she went. And as a result, she won. They restored her live streaming abilities to her channel. But not everybody can do that. Still, good for her. What a warrior. Now look, it's not just some people that want to make YouTube videos about toy trains or cooking or even their political views. These people, 4 of them that I'm showing on the screen right now, Carl Benjamin, Anne-Marie Waters, Tommy Robinson, and Gemma O'Doherty, they're candidates for political office. So by big tech and the mob and the cult going after them and shutting them down, it actually interferes with far more than just their free speech. This interferes with your rights, your democracy, the future of your country. Don't you want to hear what these people have to say? Well, you're not allowed, and someone else is making that decision for you, and it's the cult. We will never improve anything if we can't hear from the people who oppose the situation as it is now. The collective will decide what information any individual may see, hear, read, or view. It's less about freedom of speech, really, than it is about freedom to partake of that which you would like to partake of. Freedom to learn what you want to learn, hear what you want to hear, see, read, all of that. They don't want you making that decision for yourself. So they can't box you in, but what they can do is eliminate the choices from your environment. That's what this censorship is really about. Many people, upon leaving cults, explain how Once they started reading news stories and seeing the internet and hearing survivor stories from the cult, everything changed for them and they were set free from all the guilt of leaving. Any doubts they had had are gone. That's why the leftist cult doesn't want you to hear these stories. It specifically doesn't want to see you to see lesbians or black people or Muslims who have left the various cults they were in. They don't want you to see that because they show you the light. And the progressive cult does not want you to have anybody but them to go to sort your problems out, to sort through these questions. And so some examples of them keeping this information away from you. Of course, Roseanne's show. There was this Toronto free speech comedy show canceled last August 2017. The money raised was supposed to go to the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. And it wasn't just canceled, but they vandalized the bar afterwards. These people are enforcers of a cult. They aren't concerned citizens. The transgender film documentary produced by BBC and shown in England was banned in Canada. We are not allowed to see it. Of course, that's a violation of point B. Canada has effectively banned the Unplanned movie, which is an anti-abortion, pro-life. It's a pro-life documentary about a woman who changes her mind on abortion after working in the clinics. Banned in Canada. They don't want you to get any information they haven't approved. This person is transgender. Jen Smith wanted to give an anti-SOGI event in Oak Bay and did. However, the protesters pulled the fire alarms and caused such a disruption that the event couldn't effectively go on. This interferes with the whole audience, not just Jen Smith's right to speak. And just yesterday, or a couple of days ago, 14-year-old YouTuber named Soph. She was the subject of a hit piece by BuzzFeed and several other mainstream outlets. She's 14. She's hyper-articulate. I will agree with their assessment there. But they hounded YouTube into shutting down her channel, or they limited her ability to upload. She couldn't upload anything. I'm not sure what the recent developments on this are, but the thing is, this last video that got her banned was actually called Be Not Afraid, in which for 18 minutes, she skewers the psychology of the left. She calls them out for being weaklings that cannot take confrontation. It was excellent. It was a really excellent video. And she's right. Be not afraid. The thing they want the most is to scare you away from talking or sharing videos like hers or from associating with any of the people that I have mentioned so far. That's their big game. In fact, listen to this ex-Scientology member, Tony Christman, explain.
Someone is suppressive, right? If you speak out against them, you're a suppressive person. Right?
Okay.
And they write a bunch of lies about you. And if anyone talks to you in the church, they are declared suppressive and they lose all their friends. So a lot of people stay because they're in fear.
Here's some examples. We'll start with Cassie J again. She posts, "This is what I've been watching happen on Twitter for the past 2 years. Someone would tweet praise about my film, Red Pill movie, then a mob would go after them until they recant their praise. Accounts like blah 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 spew lie after lie. How do I combat this? It's never ending." And the question is good. When you don't have someone on your side in authority, when the authority figures are egging it on because they are the leaders of the cult, how do you combat it? They have effectively empowered the worst people, the most intolerant, most obsessive, most weak-minded, busybodies in all of our countries. They've empowered them to go after us if we disagree with the cult doctrine. And that's what's happening. It's an epidemic. Cassie J is not the only one. Here, the Daily Beast outs Pamela Geller's daughters. Docks them publicly. Pamela Geller's life has been threatened by Islamists for her speaking out against Islam. And do you see how the establishment, who are also cultists, are helping the Islamists by identifying Pamela Geller's daughters. Jordan Peterson's daughter was briefly kicked off of YouTube. I studied narcissism. That's why I started my YouTube channel. And I quickly realized the similarities between a narcissistic family dynamic and a cult. And then Justin Trudeau got elected in Canada. And then the Trump election started and ended, and nothing has calmed down since. We are all living inside of a cult. And those of us who don't go along with the cult doctrine are being punished systematically, just like what would happen within a narcissistic family if you're the child who tells the truth. The rest of them, you would think they would be glad to hear the truth, especially the rest of the victims, but they're not. They act like flying monkeys. Have you heard this term before? Flying monkeys is a phrase used in popular psychology, mainly in the context of narcissistic abuse. They are people who act on behalf of a narcissist to a third party, usually for an abusive purpose. The phrase has also been used to refer to people who act on behalf of a psychopath for similar purposes. Flying monkeys can be anyone who believes the narcissist's fake persona. And I would add they could also be people who benefit from going along with the fake persona or fake narrative. The flying monkey does the narcissist's bidding to inflict additional torment on the target. It may consist of spying, spreading gossip, threatening, painting the narcissist as the victim and the target as the perpetrator. The flying monkeys may make it seem like the narcissist is not really involved. They are likely to have no idea they are being used. And multiple flying monkeys are likely to act as a mobbing force against the victim. You've got the teachers doing it in schools, the unions doing it on a broader social scale to get mobs of people to show up at political events or other places. You've got the media targeting individuals and groups so that their voices will be shut down. And you've got the government and law enforcement backing all of this up with either actions overtly, making certain things illegal or threatening penalties, or doing it sort of passively by not getting involved, by not stepping in to protect someone who is being victimized by some of these flying monkeys. And here's where it starts to get more serious. Burnaby South PPC candidate was banned from Climate Change Town Hall for her views on sex ed. One thing does not have anything to do with the other, but it's that guilt by association thing. They wouldn't want to have someone who violated one of the doctrines come into their room and poison the whole environment, and then they get to be called a suppressive person by association. They're doing it to a leadership candidate, Andrew Scheer. The conservative leader has left himself open to charges of intolerance. Why? Because he was in the same park as one of these other people. From time to time, alternative media sources cover these stories. But hey, if you want to participate and show them support, you're going to be subject to harassment. Here's a Rebel Media event in Calgary, and the city police were taking pictures of all of the license plates. In the end, they said it was to protect the people who were going there. Was it? Or were they cult enforcers? And this is not about entertainment, although it includes entertainment. This is about our whole future. This is affecting every part of our society. This is a full-on assault, a total cult retribution game here. In Scientology, they called it fair gaming. Anything goes.
Here it is, SP order, fair game. May be deprived of property or injured by any means by any Scientologist without any discipline of the Scientologist. May be tricked, sued, or lied to, or destroyed.
They have their definition of suppressive person. But try to pin down a leftist on what their actual doctrine is. Try to pin down a leftist when they smear someone with the label alt-right. They can't define it. Hater, hate speech, hate group. Now they've moved on to unacceptable comments or something like this. When will it end? It will never end until we all stand up at once. We all speak out at once, and we show them how great our numbers are. Above all, don't fall for their fear and intimidation games. Like Soph said, be not afraid. We far outnumber them. The handwriting is on the wall for them. But in the meantime, it's misery. Just know, like I always say, learn to identify your real enemy. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Thanks everybody for listening. I hope you'll leave a comment. I hope you'll leave a thumbs up. My paypal.me information will be in the description box. Thank you to everybody who has sent me a donation in the last little while. Since last time I said thank you, I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful. I'll try not to leave so long between videos this time. Until next time, peace out.